Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pizzapia. That's Kyle Yates, and it's you. And today we are beginning the process. That's right. I know the draft hasn't begun yet, but it's time to start taking an early look at the board, at the quarterback position, at the running back position, and we're going to start talking about rankings. Now, I know what you're going to say, Joe. It's too early for this. We haven't had the draft. We haven't had this. We haven't had that. It's okay. We're just starting the process. You got to start somewhere. And today is really the purpose, I would say, is to really give you some arguments for and against certain players in different rankings. So we're not here saying this is the definitive ranking going into draft season, not even close to that. The purpose is to help you with your early season takes and rankings so you start to get a picture of what the board looks like. That's the exercise that we're doing here. It's not about us being right or wrong, because at the end of the day, right or wrong is proven on the field. What today is about is helping you start to discern where you like certain players, what risks are worth taking, which risks are not, and really hearing some different opinions and viewpoints. And Kyle, I don't know about you, but this kind of feels like we're starting the process now today. And I'm excited about this because with all the draft stuff we've been doing, I want to get back to a little redraft stuff, and I want to get back to a little less dynasty just for a day. I know for you, that's every day. But just for a day, I want to get back to this. And I'm excited to start this process with you today. How are you?
I'm good, man. This is a nice reprieve because right now my mind is just swirling with prospect names. I've been watching linebacker tape. Man, I need a break. Let's get back to some fantasy football here. And you said this is a really important exercise. And it's not because we're trying to predict right now who is going to be the QB5 in all of fantasy football at the end of the 2021-2022 season. No, this is just to really start to get a sense of who these players are and our confidence level in these guys, right? That is the way that I approach this, is looking, who do I feel the most confident in at the quarterback and running back position? And that's what we're going to look into today. And I'm really excited about our guests that we've got here for us.
Me too. It's one of my favorite people, and I don't throw that around lightly. And I give him a lot of crap. I'm happy he's back from camping excursions. He's going to be so proud of me because I always tease him about the camping. And I myself am going camping with the kids a little bit. I finally convinced them to do it. So the city boy's going out there. So today's guest, you know him from the Fantasy Black Book. You know him from the Game Day NFL. He's the one, the only, Dominate FF on Twitter. He's Nathan Hamilton, and there's a million things he hasn't done. Just you wait. Just you wait. Nate, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thanks for having me, guys. I mean, Joe, you just talked about camping, but it's snowing outside right now. We've got about 4 inches of snow. So I just put my patio furniture out 3 days ago, and my wife says I've cursed us with this. So yeah, welcome to my second winter in the Northeast.
Oh, no, it's terrible. I was on with Dan Harris doing a baseball show this morning, and he said there was snow in his forecast too. No. Enough of that. I am over that. I'm worried about opening the pool in a couple weeks here in Jersey. That's what I want to do. But before we get into all of that and the barbecues and cocktails poolside, it's time to talk a little football. And I want to remind everybody, although this is a nice little respite for Kyle here for a little bit of time, we are going to be doing in just a couple weeks our live stream for the NFL draft, and it's going to be fantastic. It's going to be Yates, it's going to be Tags, it's going to be me, and it's the perfect second screen experience. So while you're watching the draft, you have us up on the iPad or your PC or whatever the heck you got going, or one of the 12,000 TVs you got if you're one of those kind of folks. I know Yates has got 5,000 television in front of him at all times. But what you want to do is get in and make sure you subscribe to Fantasy Pros on our YouTube channel. That way you know exactly when it's going to start, and we're going to take you through that entire first round together. It's going to be a great time. We're going to wear ties. Who's going to want to miss that? I'm telling you, it's going to be awesome. Also, I want to make sure that you get into that NFL contest we got going on thanks to our friends at Pristine Auction. We got that Justin Jefferson autographed jersey. It's just itching to be given away this month, in the month of April. So make sure you go over there to fantasypros.com/contest. All you got to do is take a little screenshot of a review that you write in Apple Podcasts or a CastBox. You take that review, you fill out the form, and just like that, you're entered to win some free stuff. You're listening to the show anyway. It's so easy to make a nice little review and then win yourself something. It's our gift back to you, thanks to our friends at Pristine Auction. And again, that's www.fantasypros.com/contest for that Justin Jefferson autographed jersey. So, boys, let's kick things off here with the running backs, because that's where it all begins every single year, and it's getting more and more difficult. Let's start with our guest, Nathan Hamilton. Give me your first tier of running backs here and how you kind of see them on the board. I think we all still consensus FCMC number one. What's the rest of that grouping look like in that top 5 or 6 for you?
I think so. For me, number 2 is Dalvin Cook. followed by Derrick Henry, Jonathan Taylor, and then Nick Chubb at number 5.
Okay, so is that your first tier? Is Saquon out of that first tier right now until you see him on the field?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay, so that's fair. I think that's a very fair thing right now when you're waiting on players with injuries. However, I'm going to use this against Nathan Hamilton later in the show because he's Mr. Cowboy, and Dak Prescott he's perfectly fine with. He doesn't need to see him at all because he just sees stars when he sees Dak. So that is your first grouping. So Christian McCaffrey at the top, Cook, Henry, and Taylor. So what did you see last year out of Taylor that made you feel so confident about him in the second half as that number 4 overall? What's the progression there for you in 21?
Well, I mean, he finished as an RB8 as a rookie. And, he had the third most rushing yards with over 1,000, 1,169 rushing yards. 268 touches in 2020. I honestly believe that the Colts didn't even utilize him as much as they should have. So I'm expecting him to have over 300 touches in 2021, which is why I'm so high on him this year.
All right, now let's go to Yates and let's hear some of yours here in this top grouping for you. Once again, Christian McCaffrey leads thing off. You got Dalvin Cook at 2, but you've got Saquon at 3, Yates. So walk me through that grouping for you, and why are you, I guess, less concerned at this point in the calendar year for the NFL about Saquon than Hamilton might be?
Yeah, sure. So with Saquon Barkley, the conversation is, when he's on the field, ridiculous workload on the ground, ridiculous talent. It's hard to find those guys here at the top where you can feel so confident in who they are as a player that you're willing to bypass their injury concerns. Now, last year we were going into the season saying it's Saquon Barkley, it's Christian McCaffrey at the top there. So I don't want to overreact too much to an injury that I don't believe is something that we can predict moving forward. Now, he does have the rehab. He does have that to be concerned about, but all signs are pointing that he is coming back strong and healthy. It really just gets a slight knock here because of the fact that he hasn't finished each of his first 2 seasons in the NFL. He's left both seasons with an injury. So you definitely do have to take that into account. You have to be concerned, but I don't want at this point, I'll know more when I get into my projections and really nailing everything down from that perspective. But as of right now, I don't want to bump him too far down because once you get past Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook, who are just absolutely locked into a ridiculous workload when they're on the field and healthy, Alvin Kamara has his question marks with the quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
Derrick Henry, you have the lack of passing work. Same thing with Nick Chubb, Jonathan Taylor. What do the other backs' involvement in this offense look like? So it's really kind of all these guys are just kind of sandwiched together as of right now. But I do want to lean into the talent there with Saquon Barkley.
Now, you've got Alvin Kamara at 4, so I want to talk to you about him. Are you concerned right now? Because it doesn't look like it from the ranking in terms of what you are going to get from him out of this quarterback play in New Orleans, which we're still trying to figure out ourselves. And I don't think anybody has an answer, and anybody who says that they do is lying to you right now. So in your opinion, Kamara still regardless because of what? Just that constant PPR thing where he has just been so consistent. To me, I've done enough shows with you over the years to know that that's your thing with Kamara. And I think it's still a good argument regardless of who's a QB. But do you have any hesitation now that you're taking Drew Brees out of that mix playing quarterback?
It definitely bumps him down a little bit, where I don't think that he's going to see the same target level that he did with Drew Brees, who we obviously know that peppered Michael Thomas in the short to intermediate levels of the field, and then obviously Alvin Kamara out of the backfield. So yes, that is a concern. But as of right now, because we do not know who is going to come out of this, quarterback battle, this training camp position battle in New Orleans, we don't know who that is right now. And it'll drastically change. If it's Jameis Winston, I'm going to feel a little bit more confident in Alvin Kamara because of the scoring opportunities. If it's Taysom Hill, I don't know if he's going to be sending the ball as much to Taysom Hill's way, and he's going to take some of those rushing touchdowns. So right now, Kamara at 4 is really a placeholder. And it's really, again, I mentioned at the top saying that this is a level of confidence in Alvin Kamara because of the talent and because I know how good he's been in the past. Once we get to having that knowledge of who the quarterback is going to be, and that might not come until August. We have no idea as of right now.
Let's be
when
honest,
that clarity.
Yates, it might not come until November.
Right, that might be something that we see battle throughout the entire throughout the entire first 3 weeks of the season. So I think as of right now, I just got to lean into the talent there with Kamara, knowing the history and the proven production with Kamara, and I'll say that he's going to be my RB4 right now. That will obviously adjust once I know the quarterback position.
Now, before I get to my first tier of running backs, this is the first big variance. So you've got Kamara at 4. Nate, you've got him all the way at 9. So that's a pretty big chasm there as far as like, you look at overall productivity every year where Alvin Kamara has been. Granted, last year he did have that huge game that really did pad the overall totals, I think, and things were going in kind of a sketchy place until that game. So for you, why the big variance? Why is Kamara at 9 for you as opposed to where Kyle has him at 4?
So I think that, as Kyle pointed out, there's going to be a quarterback, challenge between Taysom Hill and Jameis Winston. And for me, regardless if Jameis Winston wins the battle, and I'll put that in quotes, I think we're going to see a lot more Taysom Hill than anybody wants to see. He's an exciting player, don't get me wrong, but he just hurts everybody, when he's in there. So and I said this, I tweeted out, I think yesterday, the day before, Alvin Kamara, and this is full PPR we're talking. I know we're kind of hinged on half-point PPR, but full-point PPR, he averaged 27.37 fantasy points in the first 9 games. In the 4 games Taysom Hill took over in weeks 11 through 14, he averaged 14.2 fantasy points. So there was a huge drop-off. And even if you go to half-point PPR, it's still about half of the amount of points that he was averaging per game. So that's one thing that really concerns me. Yes, I agree. Obviously, he'll move up my list if Jameis Winston wins the QB battle there. But I still think we're going to see a decent, workload from Taysom Hill. I think they're going to, work in some special packages there. And I think that takes away from the running back position.
It's funny. I think those numbers are absolutely accurate. We all know that. I think they're slightly skewed, and I want to always keep driving this home for everybody because one of those weeks was that Kendall Hinton game where the foot was completely off the gas pedal for the Saints. They were just trying to cruise through that game. So that definitely had a giant negative impact because I feel like that was almost like a walkthrough bye week for them because they really didn't have to do anything to win that football game. But that's not lost. I mean, there's certainly the easy argument and probably the correct argument that when Taysom Hill is there, it's just going to be a little less overall for Alvin Kamara for what he does. Now, for me, it's Christian McCaffrey at the top still. I'm still just thinking good thoughts and hoping for the best here, and I'll feel much better about this when I see him physically out there again. It's Derrick Henry at number 2, and everybody knows that I'm president of the Derrick Henry fan club, and I have been for some time. And I'm just looking for safety, and Yates is right. That, he's not going to catch, 80 balls. Okay, it's just not his game. That's not what he does. But when you look at what this team does, the offense runs through him. 2 years ago, I came on, I said he was going to lead the league in rushing. I did it again last year. I said he's going to repeat. Guess what? Everyone thinks that's an easy thing. It's not. In fact, there's only been 2 people in the last 21 years who have done that. It's Edgerrin James and Adrian Peterson. That's it. 2 guys have gone back-to-back and rushing leaders in the NFL. You would think it would happen way more, but it's just a very difficult thing to do. And there's an argument and a sentiment already going out there right now, which is how much more can we have on Derrick Henry? And what I want to say to people is, yes, you're correct. All of this eventually will take its toll, but Derrick Henry is a special talent. I don't think it's going to take its toll yet. I think we go one more time into this war with Derrick Henry, and the reason is he is the focal point of the offense. Touchdowns matter, yards matter, even in full point PPR. Then I go to Dalvin Cook next, and look, you can split hairs. If you want to take the upside Dalvin Cook in the PPR, that's fine over Derrick Henry. I'm cool with that. I have Nick Chubb at 4. I was just incredibly impressed when Nick Chubb came back. He just looked spectacular. Kareem Hunt kind of faded into the background. And then I've got Saquon at 5 and Jonathan Taylor at 6. And this is kind of like that tier for me where I feel really good about them. And I'm with you, Nate. I feel very good about Taylor, what I saw in the second half. I think they're going to take a leap here with Carson Wentz at quarterback. I think things are going to go well there. I'm on the positive end of that discussion with Carson Wentz in Indianapolis. But Saquon, I'm kind of in that wait and see pattern too. Saquon could easily move up to number 2 if he looks really good by the time we get to, draft season. But for right now in the early rankings, I'm going to keep him at 5. I'm going to show him some respect, but I'm not going to go crazy. Hamilton, let's go with the next grouping for you, Nate. So after you've got Jonathan Taylor and Nick Chubb, you've got Saquon at 6, then you've got Ezekiel Elliott at 7, Miles Sanders at 8, and Kamara at 9. Now, Ezekiel Elliott, I know this is a tough one for you. I know this probably hurts you to have him out of the top 5 personally.
It does.
But still, I think this is correct. I think it's time to start acknowledging here's a situation where the running back workload has caught up with him, and this offensive line is not the same line that he started out his career with. It has degraded a little bit over the last few seasons.
Right. I mean, and that's the main reason. But another huge reason is like, I honestly feel like this actually might be too low. I might end up moving him up, and it's not my fan talking. I do a great job of separating my analysis with my, my love for the Cowboys, but everyone appears to be off Zeke Elliott this year, and he had an awful year, and I'll put that in quotes as well, and was still a running back 1 in 11. Sure, that's not where you drafted him, but after beginning the season with 3 consecutive touchdowns with Dak Prescott under center, his numbers took a nosedive as soon as Dak left. And I mean, obviously, I think that his success has a lot to do with Dak Prescott's presence and whether or not he's there. So I'm expecting a bounce back year from Zeke Elliott. But at the same time, I'm tempering my expectations because I feel like, Dak has plenty of targets in that offense, which could detract a little bit from Zeke Elliott.
All right, so the rest of your RB1s, basically, it goes Chubb 5, Saquon 6, Ezekiel Elliott 7. Then you have Sanders, Kamara, Ekeler, Montgomery, and Aaron Jones. I'd like to touch on the Miles Sanders ranking because you have him very high compared to me, and I want to hear your reasoning why. What is it about this new coaching regime that gives you a little bit of faith that Miles Sanders can return this value? Because 8 overall, that's a pretty high value there on him.
For sure, but I mean, just last year, prior to the season, I think people were talking about him being a possible top 5 guy as well. And for me, I had him in the 15, 16 range, and I think he ended outside the top 20. But, a huge argument, and a lot of people don't like this argument, but a huge argument for me was Doug Peterson. I call him the fantasy running back Grim Reaper. He just doesn't utilize running backs the way we want him to.
Right.
And that's fine. It might still work in the NFL, but it doesn't work for fantasy football purposes. So there's also been a change of the guards at the quarterback position. Now Jalen Hurts. Don't know how long he's going to be in there. But for me, your new coaching staff or, the new head coach coming in, you want to give the ball to your playmakers, right? And to me, Miles Sanders, it was never a question on his talent. For me, Miles Sanders, it's all about his opportunity, and he just wasn't getting it under Doug Peterson. He's released the chains from that. I think that he's going to get the ball a lot more. If you look at his numbers, he was more consistent when he had 15-plus carries a game. I think that's where he's going to, end up in 2021. And he's going to skyrocket. I think he's going to do a lot better this year than he did last year. I think everyone was just a year behind on Miles Sanders.
All right, Yates, let's switch over to your second tier at RB1, basically. So you've had, obviously, Kamara at 4, Henry at 5. Then you've got Jonathan Taylor at 6, followed by Nick Chubb at 7. Joe Mixon at 8. Your confidence in Joe Mixon is never wavering, and I am such a fan of this. It's really starting to change. I got to say, I went back into my rankings, and I've moved Mixon up a little bit since our last couple conversations. Then you've got Ekeler at 9, Aaron Jones at 10, Ezekiel Elliott all the way down 11, and Cam Akers at 12. Now, I'm a big fan of what I saw at Akers last year. To me, he answered every question I needed in that game against the Patriots. He ran the football. He caught the football. He protected the football. He looked explosive. To me, this is right on that precipice of I'm very excited if he is RB12 in terms of rankings of what the prospects are for him. And I see you got some love for Aaron Jones in there. So take me through Mixon and take me through Elliott because you've got Elliott 11, and this is another big chasm here between your rankings and Nate's.
Sure. So let's talk about Joe Mixon really quick. This is a situation where you look at the stats. I'm going to sit down. I'm going to do projections, and the workload that Joe Mixon is going to get. Still very young. We talked about that on our latest Dynasty episode. Still very young for the running back position. He's got the long-term contract extension. They're going to use him, right? It's not like he's going to suddenly lose this job. There's no competition on the depth chart behind him now. Giovanni Bernard is out of town. And even when Bernard was in town, they started to phase him out. So Joe Mixon is going to get a significant workload on the ground. He's going to get heavy target dose through the air. There's going to be an investment in the offensive line. You've got Joe Burrow stepping into his second year. They're going to need him in this offense. So the difference from projections and what he's going to come out at and his injury concerns, the injury gap there, is not going to be enough to push him all the way down. Now, ECR has him at 18 or something like that. ECR, of course, our expert consensus ranking, it's way down there, and people are completely out on Joe Mixon. And you know what that signals to me? Is that I have the potential to get a top 10 running back, someone who, based on my projections and the workload, is going to end up there. and I can get him in the third or fourth round in fantasy football drafts next year. That is a situation where you buy, where the risk is not there, where that potentially outweighs the potential payoff.
I want to highlight what you said before going on to the next guys, because this is exactly the exercise we're doing here. The whole point of having your own rankings is to see where the chasm is between yours and then the group think, and then where you can take advantage of that. And that's exactly what Yates is putting out there. He's telling you right now, I'm the collective out there basically sees him here, and I have him way up here. And that means that I can wait on him in a draft in certain spots and take advantage of that suppressed ADP in early drafts that are going on in July or whatnot. And we know a lot of those kind of happen too.
Yeah, and I'll chime in really quick with that too. If he was going as the RB5 off the board with the injury concerns that we have about him, that would be one thing. That would probably be something where I say, you know what, that's a little bit too rich for me based on the potential payoff. I've got him at 8, but he's going as the RB, like I said, 16, 17, 18 off the board. That's too low. That completely negates the risk factor with Joe Mixon, where if he does end up getting injured again, well, guess what? It doesn't hurt my team drastically because I got him as my second, maybe even third running back off the board.
Take me through your thoughts on Elliott and Ekeler, because Ekeler is a name we haven't quite touched on yet, and I'd like to hear your thoughts on him.
Yeah, Austin Ekeler is sitting there at RB9 in my rankings right now. This is because you've got Joe Lombardi coming over from the Saints as now the offensive coordinator here in Los Angeles, and we saw what the involvement is for Alvin Kamara. We just finished talking about him, right? His involvement in the receiving game, and I believe that he is going to be utilized very heavily again next year as a receiver out of the backfield. Potentially even getting more work on the ground, where they have not done anything. They've still got Justin Jackson and they've got Joshua Kelly at the running back position. Guess what? That's not going to cut it. So you're going to have to use Austin Ekeler heavily, especially in half PPR and full PPR formats. Austin Ekeler is a top 10 running back. Lock it in for me.
Is Elliott the biggest potential bust of all the RB1s this year?
I don't know if I want to say bust, because it's all going to be dependent upon where his ADP lands. If he goes as the RB6 off the board, there's some bust factor there, because everything that Nate said, when Dak is the quarterback, this offense is drastically elevated.
Sure.
Like, absolutely. The offensive line was in shambles last year. That plays a huge role in Zeke. Now, in Zeke's production. Now, should that be for someone who they spent the number 4 overall pick on? Like, that player should be independent, should be able to produce independent of the offensive line. But yet everything rises and falls on offensive line play more than we want to admit. So Zeke at 11 for me, and depending on where he lands in ADP, no, I don't think that there's bust potential, because he is going to be extremely safe. There's actually some upside here in taking Zeke at 11. But my confidence level right now in Zeke, and again, how I want to rank it, I'm a little bit down and at least have a little bit more confidence in guys like Joe Mixon, Austin Ekeler, and Aaron Jones.
All right, for me, I've got Jonathan Taylor at 6, Aaron Jones at 7. I'm giving a lot of credit to Aaron Jones, because the guy every year just keeps on performing every single year. And they went back and they gave him money and he came back to the same situation. And I just think going right back there, it might be safe, but you know what? In the early going, safe is not a bad thing. Let's not overrate it.
Really quick, Joe, I'm going to cut you off
sure.
and just say, he actually might have more upside this year because Jamal Williams is gone.
You
as
might
a
be
receiver,
right.
As a receiver, A.J. Dillon's not filling that role.
No, A.J. Dillon's not filling the receiver role. I don't know if he's going to start pilfering some of the goal line work. That's my only concern.
Sure.
So maybe there's a balance there where you look at the two of those things, but you're 100% right. I think Aaron Jones is that guy that we keep taking for granted every year, and every year you get him at a good value, and if you're in an auction draft, forget it. He might be the best ROI of all these RBs, because what you end up paying for him compared to the upside of Taylor and some other guys, productivity-wise, they're not going to be that far apart, I don't think, when all said and done. Yet the price tag is going to be, and we don't talk enough auction strategy. We're going to talk a whole lot more of that this year with Joey P around. I can tell you that much. All right, let's continue on here. I've got Kamara at 8, and that's just me being safe right now on Kamara. Then I've got Ezekiel Elliott at 9. I'm giving him a little respect. I've got Cam Akers at 10, Joe Mixon at 11, Ekeler at 12. So my list, along with the boys here, is pretty similar. In fact, Yates and I are agreeing more than I even thought that we might. This is fun for me and him, because we haven't seen these. We just kind of jumped in and said, okay, let's show all of our rankings at the same time. It's like you're sitting at the poker table and everyone just reveals, and you kind of see what everybody else is holding. And I got to tell you, for me, Mixon's right there. He's right on that cusp. He could, if I can get him around 11 or 12, I feel great about that, because I do agree with you. He's got the upside to be 6 or even 5 potentially if everything breaks well. And I'm on the Cam Akers bandwagon. That's where I'm on. Now, before we keep going here and going to the second grouping of RBs, the RB2s, I want to take a quick time out here, and I want to just acknowledge our sponsor of today's show, Pristine Auction. PristineAuction.com is fantastically fun. I'm telling you, I'm on there. You can get some fantastic things for your man cave, for your woman cave, for your office. You can look at all the things behind the boys there and see all the cool memorabilia that's available. Pristine Auction has all of that and more. And it's not just football stuff. It's baseball stuff. It's basketball. It's wrestling. It's Marvel stuff. There's so many cool things. It's affordable. The auctions go every day, and then sometimes they're over right by that same day and night. Basically, it's affordable, it's authentic, everything comes with that certificate, which is what you're looking for, and it's free to register, free to bid, and we want to encourage our listeners to use the code FANTASYPROS, again, that's all one word, FANTASYPROS, in the registration code field, and at the top of that page, you will get, once again, free to sign up, you will get a free $5 credit as well when they use that code FANTASYPROS. Again, that's pristineauction.com. Sign up today. PRISTINE auction.com. So Hamilton, let's take through your RB2s, if we will. We're starting at Cam Akers. So he just missed the cut of your RB1s for you. You had Montgomery there, Aaron Jones, and then it slipped over to RB2 with Cam Akers at 13. So why Montgomery over Akers? I want to start with that, and then we'll do that next grouping of yours.
Sure. I mean, first of all, I do want to express my concerns with Montgomery, which is, what are the Bears doing? Kyle, I know you're a big Bears
Earmuffs,
fan.
Kyle. Earmuffs.
Sorry, buddy. Andy Dalton. I mean, come on, dude. I just saw him in Dallas. He's not the answer. There are, and the truth is, and I'm going to probably repeat this throughout this episode, is that there are just so many elite running backs returning that are back healthy this year that it's like I really had a hard time ranking these guys because I'm like, wow, that's too low. But then I look ahead at the guys that were out last season, or at least missed a good majority of the season, and I'm like, man, I got to assume they're going to be healthy and put them ahead. So, but David Montgomery was fifth in most in rushing yards, fourth most in attempts, and he ranked fifth in receptions and fourth in receiving yards amongst running backs. So for me, I think this could be a situation where he's too low, but I think I have him just about right because the return of Tariq Cohen will really hinder his passing numbers that he had last year. I'm not too worried about Damian Williams. I mean, Damian Williams had over 50 carries for the first time in his NFL career last year, and he just totaled 498 rushing yards. To me, that's not a guy that threatens a workhorse back like David Montgomery.
And we all had high expectation for Montgomery coming in the league, and it kind of fell flat. And then I think, for a lot of people, they abandoned ship, and understandably so, first half of the season, only to really lose out on the second half where he was a league winner. Let's be honest. I mean, that's what he was. So, Nate, you've got Cam Akers at 13, James Robinson at 14, Kareem Hunt at 15, then Chris Carson, Melvin Gordon, Antonio Gibson. Now, you've got Joe Mixon all the way at 19, which, once again, that could be fighting words around here. So take me through the grouping and any of your highlights here between Robinson, Hunt, Carson, and Gordon before we get to the Joe Mixon conversation of why you have him so
cool.
low.
I was going to start with Joe Mixon, but James Robinson.
Save it. I want to build a little
fine,
anticipation here on the podcast. I want to tease so everybody keeps listening because they get excited about the arguments. Go ahead.
That's fine. So James Robinson, he was the RB7 in 2020. And again, bringing back the whole how many elite running backs are coming back, so it's a little tough. However, this offense just favors volume at the running back position. He had the 6th most attempts and 9 most receptions out of running backs last year. The Jags likely to have a new quarterback this season, which raises some uncertainty in general in this offense as a whole in 2021. So that's why I'm kind of being a little reserved with him. And I have him back 7 spots further than what he was in 2020.
All right,
Kareem Hunt, you want to?
No, yeah. Let's go through. You don't have to do them all individually if it's your opinion if you want to. But is there a reason why, in particular, and let's tie it into Mixon, why Melvin Gordon, let's say, is ahead of Joe Mixon for you? Because that to me is the one. Like I can understand Chris Carson, I can understand Robinson, Akers. It's the Melvin Gordon one specifically where I struggle with. So take me through why, at least at this point, early on. Maybe it's just an injury thing. I don't know. You tell me why Mixon at 19 right now.
Well, I'll start with Melvin Gordon. I think that Melvin Gordon received a lot of hate once he left, the Chargers offense. And, Philip Lindsay kind of was the guy in Denver. And now he's gone. and that gives Gordon upside. He was just 14 yards shy of 1,000 rushing yards in 2020, and he was the RB13 even with Phillip Lindsay on the field. So for me, I think Melvin Gordon just situationally has upgraded this year, even though I have him further down. That's again due to the 5 or 6 elite quarterback or running backs that missed time last year that we're going to assume they're healthy. So that's why I still kind of have him in the same zone, because he's got more opportunity. Now, my favorite thing here is the Joe Mixon situation. First of all, I just want to say, I've never been a fan of the Cincinnati Bengals offense. That's just one thing that's always rubbed me the wrong way. I will agree with Kyle on one thing, is that volume will not be an issue. Now, he played just in 6 games last year. He had 119 carries, and he averaged almost 20 carries a game. So that's fantastic. Volume is king to a certain extent, but it's what you do with the volume. Unfortunately for Mixon, he averaged 3.6 yards per carry with those opportunities. So do I feel like the Bengals offense is heading in the right direction? Yes, but I'm still concerned with his efficiency numbers, which is why I have him lower than most.
And look, you know what? You have him lower than us, because where you have him, as Yates pointed out, is closer to where ECR has him. So you're actually, we're the weirdos here. I just want to point that out right now. That's what's going on. The rest of your
wait,
here,
I'm normal. I'm the normal one.
Look, just for
there's
today.
a problem. There's a glitch in the
today.
system. Yeah.
Don't let it go to your head. It's not going to last.
Yeah.
All right. The rest of these guys here, you have after Gordon, you have Gibson, Joe Mixon, then Clyde Edwards-Helaire 20. 21, you've got J.K. Dobbins, Josh Jacobs, James Conner, and DeAndre Swift, and then right outside RB2, Gaskin and Drake. So Conner, with the news of him signing with Arizona, which honestly we haven't all talked since that happened, what's your impact there? Because you've got him at 23, so clearly you believe something here when it comes to Conner, that this is not just a signing here for insurance, this is a signing for competition.
I mean, sure. I mean, Kenyon Drake, who wasn't looked at as a lead back prior to going to Arizona, had a career high in rush attempts, and it was the RB14. Now, I think Conner is in line for a similar season. I think, yes, obviously injury is a concern with him, but we're talking about the RB6 in 2018. He's just 25 years old. This guy's still young, and he's just a couple years removed from being the RB6 in an offense. And I think, obviously, he's part of a very explosive offense. I think that he's the guy. I know, Chase Edmonds getting a lot of love, but to me, Chase Edmonds is a great complimentary back. I think James Conner is going to be the guy there in Arizona.
Yeah, we've heard a lot of buzz where they've said, we think Edmonds is a lead back in the NFL. Well, now Conner's there. It's going to be a muddy situation, and I hate those. They're the worst. Yates, let's take a look at your RB2 list. Let's start with Antonio Gibson at the top, who finished very strong. Then you've got Miles Sanders, J.K. Dobbins. Then I love this. This is my favorite thing. Number 16 overall, Najee Harris. Yeah, come get some. Let's go. DeAndre Swift at 17. Let's take this grouping here because there's a lot of youth here. Gibson, Dobbins, Harris, Swift. These is all rookies or second-year backs for the most part, and then Miles Sanders in their grouping as well. So what are you looking for out of this cluster at RB2? Who's got the upside to outperform, and why so confident early on in Najee Harris? I know I'm pretty confident too, but even for me, I was like, Yates, look at him throwing out the Harris here at number 16 overall. So walk us through it.
Yeah, so let's start with Harris. I mean, depending on his landing spot, 16 might be too low. Where we look at the talent, we look at his assumed workload that he's going to get in the NFL, I could easily see myself ranking Najee Harris as a top 12 running back right out of the gates, depending on his landing spot. So me including rookies here, I wanted to just kind of land in the middle there and say he's a mid-range RB2 for me, borderline on that high end, but he has the potential to finish as a top 5 running back just based on his talent, his workload, on the ground, but then also his receiving ability. So depending on the offense, he could absolutely push that. Antonio Gibson, for me, this is based a lot on Ryan Fitzpatrick and the fact that we saw Gibson produce in a big way with Alex Smith, Dwayne Haskins, Taylor Heineke, whoever the quarterback was in Washington last year, Antonio Gibson just simply got it done. And I think that he was someone who needed that year. Like, he was still considered raw because 77 total career touches at Memphis. Now you get him that rookie season under his belt. Man, I think sky's the limit for this kid. So 13 there. Miles Sanders, I'm a little bit more concerned about the Jalen Hurts workload than Nate there with Miles Sanders, that I think that when you have a mobile quarterback who's going to take some work away from Miles Sanders, it's a little bit concerning for me. It wasn't so much about the coaching staff, and I know that was Nate's reasoning there, and I totally it's well based as far as Doug Peterson, but it's more so to do with Jalen Hurts. So J.K. Dobbins, he's got to do it on the back of pure efficiency rather than overall volume. I'll see if they add a third running back, but even when Mark Ingram was a healthy scratch towards the end of the season, it was Gus Edwards heavily involved in this offense and J.K. Dobbins. So he's going to have to score a lot to finish as a top 12 running back. So a little bit less optimistic there, but still the talent is there for him to be a top tier contributor.
I agree, and it was an incredibly strong finish for Dobbins, and I'm very high on him this year. It's a young man's position, too, and that's why you got to kind of take your shots with the younger guys, and it's just the nature of the beast. I love what you said about Gibson, and people forget, too, that Gibson was converted, too. I mean, he's not his natural position, so we're just possibly seeing the tip of the iceberg when it comes to Gibson, how good he can be, and the Washington identity is going to probably be run the football, take some shots with Fitzpatrick, and play great defense, and if you do that, who's to say you can't win that division again? Because I think it's right up for grabs, and I think they are right at the top of it. I really do in terms of a football team. All right, I'm going to get to the second cluster here for your RB2s. This is after DeAndre Swift at 17. You got James Robinson at 18, Melvin Gordon at 19, Javonte Williams, another rookie running back at 20, Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 21, Chris Carson at 22, Travis Etienne at 23, David Montgomery all the way at 24, and then you've got Josh Jacobs just missing that list along with Chase Edmonds and Kareem Hunt. So I understand big variance here between you and Nate with Hunt, and a bigger variance between Montgomery, who you've got at the very back end at 24, and he's got all the way at the end of RB1. So end of RB1 for Nate, end of RB2 for Yates. Now, look, I understand as a self-loathing Bears fan, sometimes there's a little bit of the struggle here, but are you underestimating Montgomery too much here and putting too much emphasis on these rookies right now in this early ranking? Just throwing that out there, because I'm sure that's the question that the listeners want to hear.
Sure. No, I don't think so. Because when you have Montgomery, you mentioned Andy Dalton is the quarterback in this offense. Now, I think that Andy Dalton, for everything that people want to say about him, and it's a disappointment, I think this is really all predicated upon the fact that we were so close as Bears fans to having Russell Wilson in this offense. And you go from the perspective of Russell Wilson now to Andy Dalton. But when you look at Matt Nagy, Andy Dalton is really his prototypical quarterback. He wants that veteran, smart player who's able to execute his offense, and he does provide a little bit more mobility than Nick Foles, which is not hard to do. So I think with Dalton, you have the potential that this offense could be something more than it was. I mean, it's hard to say that it can't be worse in 2021 than it was in 2020. So I totally get with the Montgomery, the workload. That's really where you're going to hang your hat on David Montgomery. But when you look at the perspective of Tariq Cohen is now coming back to this offense, and he's going to be heavily utilized. Nate mentioned Damian Williams. Williams does nothing for me. He's now assuming that Cordero Patterson role in this offense, which we saw was a little bit more than what we wanted to on the field, but he's going to fill that type of role, that receiver, that running back, that kind of joker in this offense. That's what Damian Williams is going to be. But Tariq Cohen coming back is the big threat for me here, because with Andy Dalton, he's going to be the quarterback who is more willing to check it down and rather than push the ball deep downfield. So I think that Tariq Cohen could be heavily, heavily targeted, and that's just going to eat its way into the overall receiving workload for David Montgomery, which is what buoyed his fantasy value in 2020. So I think with Montgomery, they're going to have to bet on him getting a ton of work, but then also scoring a lot, which I just don't see happening in this offense. So I am definitely, when Nate mentioned that he had Montgomery, my eyebrows just went skyrocketing, because I was like, oh my word, he's definitely a lot more optimistic on Montgomery than I am. I've got him all the way down here at 24.
Oh my word.
So I'll just let me jump in.
Hold
real
on,
quick.
Wait a minute. Wait, Nate. Oh my word. I mean, Yates, it's a family show. Come on, Cap. Let's he's up on the language. Oh my word. All right, go ahead, Nate. Go ahead, take your shot back.
No, I mean, I just want to say that, they're talking about getting rid of Anthony Miller as well. So it's like, who are they going to have to target? Tariq Cohen might have to line up as a wide receiver, which keeps, David Montgomery on the field. I think that to drop him from the RB4 back 20 spots, when really that's the one thing that Tariq Cohen might, hinder, which is his passing game. But that wasn't even the majority of his success in 2020. So for me, I think David Montgomery takes a small step back, but not like he's not devastated by an addition or anything. I think if anything, the offense even is working even more so in his favor.
All right, very good. Look, it's this is exactly the kind of conversation I think people need to be hearing, because these are going to be the players that inevitably make or break your season, how you invest in them and when you invest in them. And I think it's amazing too, Yates, in your rankings that you have Clyde Edwards-Helaire at 21 after what happened to his value last year. Now, I was so excited about Clyde Edwards-Helaire when he got drafted. And then by the time we got to mid-August, I was completely out because I thought it just got completely blown out of proportion. People wanting to put him as, low-end, first-round pick or sometimes even a mid-first-round pick. And I just thought it was nuts. And everyone kept basing it on the same thing, which is, well, look what Andy Reid's done in the past with running backs. And I said, yeah, that's great, except when did he have, except for 1 year with Kareem Hunt, when did he have Patrick Mahomes too? And you can't keep going back to the Eagles days. It was a different game 10, 15 years ago than it is now. And it's just, to me, that was a lazy kind of analysis that overrated a player to the point where he went from being a really cool value to being grossly overrated and basically an anchor on your team. And look, in PPR, I know he was okay, but he wasn't a number 6 overall pick, and he was going sometimes as high as that. And that's my struggle. Do you think 21 is about more reasonable, like low-end RB2 is a good value for him?
I'm sorry.
That's kind of where I have them.
Oh, for me,
yeah.
With Clyde Edwards-Helaire, sorry. With CEH, I think you've got to kind of look at the incoming rookies, and I think that's a big difference too, and worth pointing out with Nate and my difference in rankings here, where he doesn't have any of the rookies in, which is completely fair. Like, we don't know the landing spots, completely fair, but I wanted to include them here to at least get them in. So when we know those landing spots, I think you're going to see some of these other guys get pushed down the board a little bit. I would rather lean into the workload that Travis Etienne is going to get as a receiver. And then with Javonte Williams, he's going to get a ton of work on the ground. He's going to get work through the air as well. So I think all those just kind of go together to push Montgomery down the board a little bit, Kareem Hunt, and CEH is one of those where I don't feel confident. I don't feel confident in the workload that CEH is going to get. Now, he should be utilized more as a receiver. That's just not going to happen in this offense with Patrick Mahomes throwing the ball and dancing around and then throwing the ball deep downfield. It's different than Andy Dalton, who's going to go tick through his progressions really quick. If it's not there, he's going to check down. So I think if you put CEH in Chicago's offense, then that's a totally different conversation. But just with right now with him in Kansas City, I don't see the path for him to get a significant enough workload to push him up into the top 15.
All right, we still got quarterbacks to go here, and before I get into my RB2s real quick, I want to take another quick time out and recognize sponsor of today's show, Blue Chew. Blue Chew is making waves and bringing more confidence to the bedroom. It's a unique online service that delivers the same active ingredients as Viagra or Cialis, but in a chewable form at a fraction of the cost. Blue Chew tablets combat all forms of AD that can help men gain extra confidence for when it's time to perform. And look, guys, there's no reason to be ashamed of this. Be ashamed for not taking advantage of a service like Blue Chew instead. It's an online prescription service, no visits to the doctor, no awkward conversations, and it ships right to your door in a discreet package. Look, you don't like swallowing pills? There you go. It's a chewable. So it's tablets that are made in the USA. They prepare and ship directly to you, and it's cheaper than a pharmacy. So you can benefit from Blue Chew and from us here at Fantasy Pros, because today, if you go and you sign up, we've got a special offer for our listeners. Try Blue Chew for free when you use our promo code Fantasy Pros. Again, that's all one word, Fantasy Pros at checkout, and pay just $5 shipping. That's BlueChew.com, the promo code Fantasy Pros, all one word, to receive your first month for free. And we want to thank Blue Chew for being a sponsor of today's Fantasy Pros podcast. Now, for me, you'll be happy, everybody. I'm the guy in the middle on David Montgomery between these two chasms. So I am protecting the David Montgomery shares, but I'm not going crazy either with how much I like him. J.K. Dobbins I have at 13 because I still think the identity of this team until further notice, now maybe that changes in the draft, but I think Baltimore is still going to be this incredibly heavy run-first offense. And guess what? I still think J.K. Dobbins is going to be the head of it, even though Gus Edwards is still going to be around. Chris Carson's at 14. Once again, safe. I know what it is. It's not the high ceiling of Christian McCaffrey or Derrick Henry, and that's okay. I know what he is. Then I've got David Montgomery at 15, DeAndre Swift at 16, James Robinson at 17, Antonio Gibson at 18. But I can tell you right now, there's a good chance Gibson's going to fly up my rankings come August when I start to see him in that offense a little bit with Fitzpatrick. Najee Harris at 19. See, I put the rookies in too. You had him even higher than me. I'm so proud, Yates. I'm so proud. Then I've got Josh Jacobs at 20 because I like when guys have something to prove. And I think Jacobs does. And I think he can't be too happy about Kenyon Drake coming in here. So I think this might be exactly what Jacobs needs. So I've got Clyde Edwards-Helaire, exact same spot as Yates at 21. I've got Miles Sanders at 22. I have gross concerns about this Eagles offense, just generally speaking. So new coach, new playbook, new quarterback at the helm, a lot of new things. I like continuity. It's why I value Aaron Jones so much. Continuity is important in the NFL. Just go look at the line changes year over year and the teams that don't change that stuff and the teams that do and the success that that brings to the field. And guess what? It filters over into your fantasy team too, and that's incredibly important, under-discussed, undervalued, but we're not going to under-discuss it here. We're going to talk about that. Then I've got, after Miles Sanders, I've actually got Fournette at 23. I know it sounds crazy, but I think Fournette finished that season so strong, came back with some sort of assurance that he's going to be sorta, kinda the guy. And I don't care that Gio Bernard's there. He's just chasing a ring, and he deserves it because he just spent the last 10 years basically in Cincinnati in football hell. So if anybody wants to go and get himself a ring, it's Gio. I'm okay with that. I'm at peace with that. Then I've got Damian Harris, Kareem Hunt there kind of on the outside. I'd love to see where Travis Etienne ends up. I think he's going to possibly catapult above Leonard Fournette for me if he ends up in a good spot. And I'm going to throw this out there. And I said it on a show yesterday, and I'd love to get your take. Hamilton, I'll start with you. Nate, do you think there's a chance that by the time we get to opening day for the Bucs, that Ronald Jones is not on this roster for one reason or another?
So I actually would be surprised if Ronald Jones was not on the roster because, yes, our last impression of playoff Lenny, that's what everyone wanted to see, and we think it's going to leak over to the next season. However, if you look at last year, when Ronald Jones was on the field, and this hurts me actually as a Leonard Fournette fan, this hurts me to say, Ronald Jones looked like the more explosive back. He looked like the most productive guy to be on the field. And for me, I think that he could resume those duties. And I think you're downplaying Gio Bernard just a little bit. I think that he could actually turn out to be the James White in this offense for Tom Brady. And he likes, he likes those small pass catching backs. So I think Gio Bernard could actually have a decent enough role here to muddy the waters even more at this position.
All right, fair enough. So let's pivot over to the quarterback position here. And what we're going to do is we're going to go through these guys and basically give you, go through QB1 and then kind of talk about the guys that are on the peripheral. So Yates, let's start with you on this one since we started with Nate on the other side of this. So give me your number one quarterbacks here. You're starting with Mahomes, and spoiler alert, all three of us have Mahomes and Josh Allen at the top two spots. So it's after that where things get a little bit more different. So why don't you take me through your first tier if you want, or even QB1 as a whole if you prefer?
Yeah, you know what I'll do is QB 1 through 5, and so just make it easy. So I will go with, Patrick Mahomes, no-brainer there. Josh Allen, that feels like a no-brainer too, and that I don't think that gap is super far between the two of them. Kyler Murray at 3, I'm leaning into that rushing workload. When we saw that he was fully healthy, we saw that we saw him utilized heavily around the goal line, and when he was he was dealing with that ankle injury, that's when Kenyon Drake's production took off, and he was scoring those touchdowns. I think that we're going to see a healthy Kyler Murray be heavily utilized around the goal line again. And then I've got Dak Prescott at 4. I'm really not super concerned about him coming back from that ankle injury, as gross as it was, as much as I freaked out when I was watching it live. You know what? I'm just going right back to saying that Dak is going to be with all the toys that he has in this offense. I mean, it's just an absolutely loaded offense, a healthy offensive line. He should be extremely productive again in 2021. And then I've got Lamar Jackson there at 5, leaning back on that rushing workload.
All right, so clearly the top 5 is the top 5 here. Nate, give me your top 5. Starts with Mahomes and Allen, and then you've got Dak, Kyler Murray, and Rodgers. Do you think that the gap between Mahomes and Allen is that slim as well, just out of curiosity?
I mean, I think Josh Allen's just a rising star in this league. I think Patrick Mahomes kind of did that right off the bat, and Josh Allen did too, to a lower extent, but now he's got a feel for having Stephon Diggs in that offense. He's got crazy amount of talent the Buffalo Bills are doing the right thing at the right times in the AFC East. You know, he was top 5 in passing yards and passing touchdowns. He was top 4 in passing rating. You know, so for me, Josh Allen, yeah, he is that guy just below Patrick Mahomes. So there's no reason why not to have him at QB2. Dak Prescott, you know, we have Kyler Murray and Dak Prescott flipped for Kyle. For me, I think, you know, the offense that Dak is in, it's insane. The amount of talented players he has to throw to in this offense is going to be insane to watch for 2021. And I know Tags actually mentioned this a while ago as a quiz on Twitter, you know, where he said there's one quarterback to have 2 top 8 single game performances, and that was Dak Prescott. And he barely played 5 games in 2020, and he still owned 2 of those top 8 single game performances. So for me, Dak Prescott, he deserves to be in that top tier as well.
Look, I can't disagree with you, and Dak Prescott's in my top 5 also. He is actually number 5 for me. I had so many shares in all my Superflex leagues of Dak Prescott because to me he was the perfect ROI in Superflex. Just past that top super elite grouping that was really expensive last year going in with Lamar and Mahomes. And I thought, ooh, he could go real close to that same kind of point totals when all said and done with this offense. And when they drafted CeeDee Lamb, I just went bananas over it. And I thought it was going to be such a good situation. In that first game, you saw the rapport between the two of them, that game against LA. And I went, oh, here we go. Let's go. And then the ankle, as Yates said, I was very upset. Not just because it was a gruesome injury, but because of all the shares that went south because of it. But you soldier on.
My son cried. My son cried.
Yeah, well, I cried too. I'm not going to lie. All right? So,
me
for
too,
me,
buddy.
It's Mahomes at the top still because, and like I write up the quarterbacks every year for the Black Book, and I just did all of these profiles. And, you know, Mahomes at the end, you know, Allen could be above him 1 year. Lamar could be above him 1 year. Dak could be above him this year. It could even be Kyler Murray above him. But the whole point is why you keep Mahomes at number 1 overall is because you know he's going to be around that every single year. And we're still not even seeing, I think, how good he could be. It's terrifying how young he is, how good he is. Josh Allen's right there. I've been a very big supporter of his over the years, took a lot of shots for it, and now it's all kind of evened out, which is good. Kyler Murray, I have at 3, but it's 3 with a little bit of fear. I'm not going to lie. It's 3 with fear still because of the body type and because what you saw, what happened after that Hail Murray game. You see him, he got fallen upon by a giant lineman. Next thing you know, the shoulder's not feeling good. He can't throw the ball downfield as much. Next thing you know, that offense struggles for a couple weeks. And that's a reality that you have to keep in mind whenever you have Kyler Murray. Lamar Jackson, I have at 4. Dak, I have at 5. This can flip-flop either way for me. It's just a matter of who controls the fantasy points the most. And for me, you know, something about Lamar controlling all of it. And I think there's going to be some motivation there from him. I think they will get better and make more adjustments. They got found out a little bit, and then they kind of refound their identity in the second half of the year for the Ravens. I want to see what they do in the draft. If Sammy Watkins is it, then I think I'm going to put Dak ahead of him. If it's not, then I want to see if it is a Rashad Bateman or somebody like that. Okay, now you have my attention. But again, this is the early rankings. So after this top tier for you, then we've got some of the old standbys. So Yates, let's talk about some of the old standbys here. You got this is what happens when you're doing baseball. Aaron Rodgers, Justin Herbert, Russell Wilson here in this next grouping. And then Deshaun Watson at 8, which is ironically exactly where I have Deshaun because I feel like 8 is the perfect no man's land right now.
It's a complete placeholder.
That's all it is, right?
Placeholder.
Okay,
that's where I got him.
Okay, so take me through your confidence in Rodgers still continuing to be elite, and your confidence in Justin Herbert, that what you saw last year was not just a flash in the pan.
I mean, with Rodgers, it's hard to knock the guy after putting up an MVP performance last season. And you know what? He doesn't get the nod to the top 3 or top 4 for me just because of the rushing upside of some of these other guys. Right. But Rodgers, man, I mean, it's hard to knock the guy. Russell Wilson, I still have confidence. I think that he's going to take a little bit of a hit this year if they do move towards more of a balanced rushing approach. I could easily see once I do my projections that, you know, Deshaun Watson, if this all gets cleared up and he plays, yeah, he's going to be above Russ. You know, maybe even Joe Burrow, if he's ready to start the season. Justin Herbert, I could easily see them all leapfrogging him because Russ does have the potential to give you those big boom performances, but then absolutely just leave you high and dry in some games. So we mentioned Deshaun Watson, that he's a complete placeholder. Justin Herbert, I am a little bit hesitant with moving away from Shane Steichen, who's now the offensive coordinator in Philadelphia, who was primarily responsible for his success. Now you're moving to Brandon Staley, the defensive coordinator from the Los Angeles Rams last year, is now the head coach. Did they bring in that balanced approach? Did they bring in that, we're going to lean heavily on the run game? Did they add a significant investment at the running back position to take away some of the pressure? I think Herbert's still going to be great, but I'm not necessarily super confident in projecting a top 5 performance. So, and then Burrow, I'm still, for right now, placeholder there because I don't know where the recovery is, where the recovery timeline, but I'm still very, very optimistic.
Okay, so Rodgers, Wilson, Watson, Joe Burrow, that's your grouping there. Excuse me, I was looking at Nate's grouping there when I was going through them, so I apologize to Yates. So my bad there on that one, so we'll reset that. So taking you through after, you've got Lamar at 5, you've got Aaron Rodgers at 6, Russell Wilson at 7, Deshaun Watson at 8, Joe Burrow at 9, and Justin Herbert at 10. The question really goes to Nate. Nate! Do you think that Justin Herbert at number 6 overall, I will take that question from Yates and give it to you instead. Do you think that you saw enough at Justin Herbert to really support this ranking at 6 when there's still some other guys on that board that, like Russell Wilson per se, that you've seen so much more out of?
Sure. I mean, Justin Herbert showed a lot of poise as a rookie last year. He didn't begin the season as a Chargers starting quarterback. He had 10 games with multiple touchdown passes. 6 of them were 3 or more TDs. He threw fewer interceptions than guys like Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, and Tom Brady. I mean, for me, what more can you say for a rookie season? I'm excited for his sophomore year, and that's why I have him listed where I do, just ahead of Russell Wilson, which, by the way, Pete Carroll keeps talking about, his love for the run game and how he wants to do that. And to me, why would you, when you have arguably the best wide receiver duo in the league, and an amazing elite quarterback? However, I still have to believe what Pete Carroll says because he's not one of those coaches that is just coaches speak. When he talks, he's actually he has a plan formulated, and I think there's a reason for it. And I think that we're going to see a lot more out of Chris Carson this year, which is going to hinder Russell Wilson.
All right, now what's funny is all 3 of us, I realize too, have Deshaun Watson at 8. So we've all placeholded him exactly there, which is, let's just see what happens. Let's see what's going on. Let's not drop him out of QB1 altogether. It's too big of a talent, but obviously what's going on is going to have some sort of ramification. We just don't know what it is yet. Now, the good news in a single quarterback league is there's plenty of quarterbacks that you can like. What's eerie to me is how similar Yates and I see the quarterback board. Actually, a lot of the boards, even running back too, which tells me one of 2 things. Number 1, Yates and I could run a team together because we kind of see values the same, which is cool. Number 2, if I'm in a draft with Yates, it's going to be a bloodbath.
Right.
It's going to be terrible.
Right.
We're going to be cursing at each other, throwing things. So I look forward to both of those things potentially in 2021. We'll see how that goes. I've got in my second tier of quarterbacks, Aaron Rodgers just behind those top 5 guys. Once again, that's the elite for me. Rodgers, just because of the age factor in, that's why he's at 6. It's not a knock on Aaron Rodgers. He's still terrific. Russell Wilson, I am going to play it safe at 7 with him. Deshaun Watson at 8. Justin Herbert at 9 for me. Burrow at 10. You've got them flip-flop, Yates.
Yep.
We've got the same guys in the same spot again. We didn't look at each other's rankings before. We just kind of came into the show today. I've got Ryan Tannehill at 11 because I've just got a little bit more respect for Ryan Tannehill than I feel like most people out there. And I love what I saw sometimes when he's just taking the ball into his own hands and just making plays and doing stuff. And I think that's the thing about Ryan Tannehill. I don't know how long it's going to take everybody to just kind of recognize, hey, fantasy-wise, it's been pretty good ever since he's taken over, and it keeps getting better. And it feels like he's still working against the old perception. And I think at a certain point in time, we have to let that go. And that has to die with Adam Gase. It has to die with his days in the Dolphins. If you look at the game log, you look at what Ryan Tannehill's been able to do the last year and change, it's been very solid here at quarterback. I've got Matthew Stafford at 12, and this is where you get the old farts coming in here. You got Stafford at 12, Brady at 13, and you got Matt Ryan right around there as well. So to me, it's that old guard where any of these guys, they're very safe. You got to figure that Matt Ryan's still going to be throwing the ball and being aggressive. If you're playing in those super flex leagues and you start to look a little at the high-end QB2 guys, I've actually got Trevor Lawrence all the way up there at 16 because I feel like there's real opportunity here for Trevor Lawrence to be this good right away. And it's funny because it's kind of where I started with Joe Burrow last year. And I remember being on shows here on Fantasy Pros with Tags and Yates, kind of having that discussion. And, not everybody was as high on Burrow as some of us, but I got to tell you, man, everything you started to see made you feel really good that the next great quarterback coming into the NFL could succeed right away. And I think Lawrence could. I'd still put the grizzled old veterans ahead of him, but I won't put Kirk Cousins ahead of him. And I'm struggling with Wentz. That's going to be a fascinating one. And I've got Jalen Hurts all the way at 19 and then Roethlisberger at 20. That's kind of the top 20. Now, for me, I get it. Everybody right now is looking at Jalen Hurts and the rushing equity and all that stuff. I'm just not ready yet to buy into it. I think there's a lot more downside than people want to recognize when it comes to Jalen Hurts and the Eagles. I want to see the draft. After it unfolds, maybe I'll feel differently. Maybe Hurts will leapfrog Lawrence for me. But right now, that's kind of where I'm at, which brings me back to Yates, because Yates at the end of quarterback 1, beginning of QB2 for you, you've got Deshaun at 8, Joe Burrow at 9, Herbert at 10, then Stafford, then Jalen Hurts. So Jalen Hurts is right there at 12 for you. I've seen him as high as 6 on some people's lists, which I think is nuts. But let's take me through your 12. Why is he a QB1 for you going into this early ranking?
I mean, I put him at 12 because I thought that one of you guys were going to have him all the way up at 6 or 7, and then I would have to kind of meet in the middle there. No, with Hurts, I'm definitely not in to the price tag that he is going to be. I can tell you right now that I am going to have 0 shares of Jalen Hurts in 2021, just based on the projection of his ADP and how bullish some analysts are on him. Like, man, I'm just going to have 0 shares because the downside, you mentioned it, Joe, the downside of Jalen Hurts in this offense with Jalen Reagor is literally his only wide receiver of note. And Jalen Reagor is not that great based on what we saw from last year. So he is going to have to get it done completely on the back of rushing production. And yes, he's an excellent mobile quarterback, but yet he plays more with that backyard style of football rather than a refined and schemed open. And Nick Sirianni, he just came from Phillip Rivers. What conviction do we have that he is going to be able to scheme up things from
I'm glad you said that, Yates, because that's what I struggle with too, is everybody sees the talent, but they're failing to recognize that in the NFL, it is very difficult for all these things to kind of, all of a sudden come to fruition at the same time. It takes time. So I'm not saying Hurts can't, maybe he does have an incredible second half, and as the season builds on, he becomes that guy. But what happens in the first half of your fantasy season? Right. You only have so many weeks to get into the playoffs, and I just don't think it's a good investment, especially in a single quarterback league. I don't think it's almost unnecessary risk. In a 2-quarterback league, I get it, depending on how you approach that board. If you want to, get those triple up on quarterbacks and approach it that way, that's cool. Hamilton, where do you have him? Because he is not in your top 14 either, since we're talking about Hurts.
No, he's probably closer to the 16 to 18 range for me, and I think I'm being too nice, actually, when it comes to that. I just feel like when you look at the NFC East, I feel like the Eagles are the most broken team heading into 2021. So and we've had such a small sample size of Jalen Hurts where, he's got that rushing ability, but that's great in fantasy football, but that is literally not everything. If he can't capitalize on other things, then that's going to quickly become not part of his game anymore. Because if he cannot rush successfully, then he's going to find himself in a lot of trouble, which is why, again, kind of leads to my Miles Sanders rankings of why I have Miles Sanders a little bit high, because to me, he is the clear top elite player in that offense, and I think that he should get the ball a lot more.
It's funny that, we all went in here with different ideas of where the other people were going to have Hurts. And I think all of us were surprised at the end of the day. And I think we're bringing up some good points here, which is you're hearing a lot of buzz because he's new, because he's athletic and very exciting to watch. I'll put it to you this way. There will be weeks where I'm absolutely going to love Jalen Hurts as a matchup DFS quarterback. I'm going to be all in, man. I'm going to be pumping that horn. Woohoo. Yeah, let's go. Jalen Hurts. And then there's other weeks where I wouldn't want to touch him. And to me, that makes for a bad season-long investment. And that's something you have to understand.
Especially if he's going as the QB7 off the board.
Yeah, which it's unnecessary. See, I'm not going to say it's wrong. I'm going to say it's unnecessary because I think that's a better approach. Why are we putting ourselves in that kind of situation?
Right.
And especially when the elite quarterback has taken a step so far above now that it is dangerous to fall grossly behind a quarterback. You bet. I would much rather have Aaron Rodgers. I would much rather be safer with Russell Wilson. If Watson plays, obviously that's a no-brainer, but there's a lot of other clouds around that.
Right.
Let's take you
really quick, Joe. I'm sorry. So with Nick Sirianni coming over as the head coach, I think with Jalen Hurts, I would feel completely differently if they had brought over like Greg Roman as the offensive coordinator from Baltimore. Like if they had taken that scheme and were building it for Jalen Hurts, then absolutely I would feel much more confident. But they didn't. They were taking the scheme of Frank Reich from Indianapolis that just saw Phillip Rivers, and that's a completely different offense than what is going to take advantage of Jalen Hurts' skill set.
100%. Let's look at Nate Hamilton's rest of rankings. He had Rodgers at 5, Justin Herbert at 6. We talked about Russell Wilson 7, Deshaun at 8. Then you've got Tannehill at 9 as a QB1, Tom Brady at 10, Lamar Jackson all the way to 11. Now, this is a huge chasm here. I have him as a top 5. Yates, you have him top 5 as well. You have at number 5. And you've got him all the way to 11. So talk me through the why of this, because, again, it's a huge difference. So I think it's important to at least bring up why you might want to do this or what gives you that hesitation with the value of LJ coming into the season.
Sure. I mean, he was the RB10 last year, so it's not far from what he finished last year. And I don't like to just take
the
what they finished.
The QB10 last year.
The QB10. I'm sorry. Yeah, I don't like.
He is not a running back. Stop with that narrative, everybody.
Well, I'm sorry.
He has told everybody 100 times he is not a running back. Okay,
that is one reason why I'm lower on J.K. Dobbins, because the RB1 in that offense is Lamar Jackson. But I will say this, is that Lamar Jackson just frustrates me. I mean, he's just a quarterback. When I watch him, he bails after his first read. I'm sorry. He just does it every time. If his first read isn't open, he's looking for the hole in the line to rush. And at some point, that's going to catch up to him. Like, in what has the Baltimore Ravens done in this offense to warrant, he's going to have a much better season this year than he did last year. We haven't seen the draft yet, but the truth is, what did they add? Sammy Watkins? I mean, how many games is he good for? So
that's fair.
And a lot of people, Marquise Brown, Hollywood Brown, everyone's like, yeah, but now everyone's bailing on him. So for me, the offense hasn't really done anything to make me say, yeah, he's going to be so much better than he was last year. In fact, I think defenses are going to challenge him even more so this year to throw. And if he can't do that, then he's going to find himself in a lot of trouble. That safe floor at rushing is why he's still a top 12 guy for me. But, as far as everything else goes, there are so many other quarterbacks I'd rather have ahead of him that I think have higher upside than Lamar Jackson, as crazy as that sounds.
Well, I think it's a little chicken and egg. And maybe, Yates, you could chime in on this too, and then we'll talk about one more thing and call it a day here. But it feels to me like if you don't have the kind of wide receivers that can separate, and you don't have the kind of wide receiver talent to get the job done, nor do you have an offensive line that protects very well and creates a good pocket. This is a run line. That's what they are. That's how they were built, because that was what the scheme is. And if you go back in college, you see Lamar Jackson was a pretty decent pocket passer, actually. Do you think it's just a matter of getting him some real legitimate wide receiver talent that can get open on their own? Does that cure some of the ills? Or do you think this is just who Lamar Jackson is, Yates?
I think it could be a combination of the two, where you look at where he came into the NFL, and yes, you did see that a little bit more in college. Now, I wasn't scouting at the time that Lamar Jackson came out, so I can't speak to his tape specifically, but where, that might have been who he is, but then he gets into the NFL and he doesn't have the wide receiver talent around him, so then he's a little bit more, has more of a tendency, to lean on his rushing ability, what he knows. So yes, you can see what Nate is talking about, where he gets through his first read and it's not there, and he goes, I'm going to go with what I know. And yes, what he knows is that he's the best mobile quarterback in the game, and it's very, very difficult to get your hands on him. So I think if you do see them invest in a significant pick and a wide receiver that's not named Sammy Watkins, then sure, maybe I think that you might be a little bit more optimistic. But for me, I still have him as a top 5 option, because that rushing ability is what he does so damn well, and it's so difficult to move off of that and project. I think that if he does rush as much as we're projecting, I think it's very difficult to see him land outside the top 10.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on that too, and I think there's upside to get better in the passing game depending on what they surround him with. Last question for you guys. There's a lot of old guard quarterbacks still around. Drew Brees is gone. Phillip Rivers is gone. But you still got Brady. You still got Matt Ryan, Kirk Cousins, Roethlisberger. Who's your favorite ROI of the older guys? Hamilton, let's start with you, Nate.
It's got to be Aaron Rodgers, right? I mean, he
doesn't count. Let's take the guys at the bottom of the tier. We know he's the best of the old guy.
I'll go to like the furthest extreme then. Tom Brady. He's a top 10 guy for me. Tom Brady, he's what, 43?
He's 143. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, 143. That was what I meant to say. So I'm convinced there's nothing this guy can't do. He's top 12 quarterback. That's nothing for Tom Brady. The Bucs are bringing back everybody. And as I mentioned earlier, the addition of Gio Bernard, it might be just enough to just, put him a little bit even more over the top than what he was last year. And O.J. Howard is expected to be healthy. I know a lot of people offer him, but think about, him, Cameron Brate, Rob Gronkowski. I mean, I could list the entire offense. They have ridiculous amount of weapons. Tom Brady knows how to utilize those. He's never had weapons like that in his entire career. And look what he just did. He just won a Super Bowl. So for me, it's Tom Brady. It's not even close.
All right. Yates, same thing for you. Is Brady the best of that old guard around the low-end QB1 that you feel good about?
He absolutely is. I've got him at 13, and it's hard to, for all the reasons that Nate said, move off of him, where you have every single player returning, not named Antonio Brown at this point, but let's not rule that out. And O.J. Howard coming back, Giovanni Bernard, which let's look at the drop numbers that Ronald Jones, Leonard Fournette, Keyshawn Vaughn put together last year, and you say the fantasy production can only go up if you have a sure-handed receiver who out of the backfield who can just pick up those additional, third down passes or whatever. So yeah, it's Brady for me at 13 there. But I am intrigued by Matt Ryan this year, where you have Arthur Smith coming over from Tennessee, who's going to be bringing that offense that we saw Derrick Henry thrive in, that Ryan Tannehill thrived in here. And if Matt Ryan, he's going to see his pass attempts come down, most likely. Let's see what they do to invest in the defense, because that defense is still a problem. But let's see, is he implementing that same offense where they're going to lean heavily on the run game? Well, then that's still relying heavily off play action, which Matt Ryan can thrive in. It might not be where you see the heavy pass attempts from Matt Ryan, but you see his touchdown numbers skyrocket again to that like 36 that we've seen from him before.
I think that's a really good one too, as Matt Ryan. All right, let's remind everybody where they can find our guest, Nathan Hamilton. Nate, thank you so much for taking your time with us today. Where can they follow you on Twitter and see all your work?
Thanks, man. At DominateFF, that's where I live. That's my home. That's, if you ever want to, get a hold of me, that's where you can find me. Obviously, my work over at the Game Day NFL. And shortly, my fourth time on the Fantasy Football Black Book with Joe Pisapia, the man himself. Look out for that as well coming this year. So
Nate and I do all the draft strategy chapters. So we go through the first couple rounds of all the different draft types, standard, half, and full PPR, super flex, and give you a breakdown of how to approach the player pool. And Nate, I'm so happy to have you back. Is it the fourth year? Is this what it is? Are we getting that
fourth year? Yeah.
Oh my God. Let's not talk about how old we are now. All right, but that's great news. I'm excited to have you back, and that drops on June 1st. And Yates, anything going on for you this week with the Dynasty Pod? Everybody needs to pay attention to.
We've got, we're continuing our prospect evaluation series over there. So we're looking at tight end and quarterback this week, and be paying attention to my Twitter handle over at Kyle Y NFL. We're going to be dropping a listener mailbag link there soon. So we're doing a mailbag this week. So pay attention over there and get your question on the show.
There you go. Love it. And make sure you subscribe to Fantasy Pros on YouTube, because we're going to be carrying the draft coverage live here. Again, it is the perfect second screen experience for you. If you play fantasy, you can watch the NFL draft unfold and watch our fantasy breakdowns of it at the same time. It doesn't get much better than that. Also want to remind everybody about that giveaway. Thanks to our friends at Pristine Auction. Go to fantasypros.com/contest and get involved in that Justin Jefferson giveaway, that autographed jersey, and sign up at Pristine Auction and get the $5 off just for registering. Again, that's a $5 credit, and that's pristineauction.com, PRISTINE auction.com, and try Blue Chew for free when you use the promo code FantasyPros at checkout. Pay just $5 shipping. That's bluechew.com. Promo code FantasyPros, one word, to receive your first month free. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring this podcast along with Pristine Auction. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For Kyle Yates and Nate Hamilton, I'm Joe Pisapia. We'll see you next time, kids.
Thanks for tuning in to the Fantasy Pros YouTube channel. Don't forget to check out our featured videos. And while you're at it, make sure to follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Fantasy Pros, so you can get the latest news and updates to give you the edge you need in your fantasy league.